Two guys, one movie, one dark place.
In 3D.
Yes, everybody, this is Two Guys, One Movie. This is Steve Arviso.
And Charles Musick.
And we are bringing you one of the most overlooked gems that I could think of, as far as anthology films are considered, Tales from the Darkside, the movie.
It's actually one of my favorite, as far as the anthology stories.
It's good. It's surprisingly good. And it's the follow-up to a very classic anthology TV show from the 80s.
Which
Tales from the Darkside.
I do remember watching the opening of the show, Tale from the Darkside,
yes.
and stuff like that.
It was a trippy opening.
It was creepy.
Yeah, and the show was brought to you heavily by George Romero. I believe George Romero was heavily responsible for bringing it along with Stephen King after, I believe, it was the success of the first Creep Show. Something like that, or that got them really working together to do Creep Show. But yeah, it's often overlooked. I mean, the anthology movies, there was a lot of anthology series for some reason during the 80s. You had Tales from the Darkside, you had Monsters, which a lot of people don't remember. Towards the end of the 80s, you had Tales from the Crypt, Freddy's Nightmares, Friday the 13th, the series, which is actually not much of an anthology show. It's actually more of a episodic series, but
The closest I'd say to, what most people, if you don't know what Tales from the Darkside is, it's basically your Tales from the Crypt. It's very similar.
Very similar. It's almost like Tales from the Crypt meets Twilight Zone. It's a bit of a mid-ground. Tales from the Crypt was very adult-oriented. Twilight Zone's very, classic-y. But this brings a little bit more of that schlock from, Tales from the Crypt into more of the, there are some nice metaphors and, fables and whatnot that get mixed into this film. It's a little bit more lighthearted than a lot more lighthearted from Tales from the Crypt, but a lot more dark and sinister than, Twilight Zone was. So
now, did you watch this movie when you were younger?
From what I remember, yeah, I remember the poster a lot. The poster, if I remember right, it's not this poster that you see, if you go to Wikipedia and look at the poster, that's not the poster I remember in my video store. I remember it being some guy in like a mask or something it almost looked like a Nightmare on Elm Street poster. It seemed like he had like a mask on and it looked a bit fleshy, like exposed flesh kind of thing. But it wasn't this poster that I remember. This is, I think, the theatrical poster. That stood out to me more than anything.
Actually, looking at the theatrical poster, it looks very Gremlin-like.
Yeah. Those cat eyes, whatnot. And, but yeah, there are three main stories, with a wraparound that features Matthew Lawrence of all people.
Which is what I actually like. I like that we open up and it gives us a beginning and ending as he's telling us these stories. I mean, I like these type of movies where they do this, and the fact that, Matthew Lawrence, of course, as we all know now, he was in Boy Meets World, of course.
Yes, and, Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, for those who remember that brief time in the, mid-90s.
But he's basically captured, and chained in this, woman's, pantry, in a cage she kinda has.
Some sort of witch that wants to eat children, yeah.
And, I mean, granted, it's very Hansel and Gretel, but witches always creep me out, especially since, in history, we have a history of witches being, in our past, and with the witch trials and stuff.
Hell, the movie Witches scared the shit out of me, and that was by the guy who brought us Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
So witches always creep me out, so actually the opening always, was like, oh man, it set the tone perfectly.
Yeah,
for a younger me to watch this.
For young kids, it's very creepy. For the adults, it's very tongue-in-cheek in terms of the comedy as well. Now, it's very much, it's obviously Hansel and Gretel, but it's different. And the kid's trying to bargain for his life, and he keeps her busy by telling her stories. So that alone is very tongue-in-cheek, because there's no way in hell anyone trying to do this shit is going to wait for Matthew Lawrence to stop telling his goddamn stories. Where did he even get the book? He's reading from a book in this movie.
I think he's actually just telling her the stories, and she's got a cookbook she's reading.
I would have sworn at one point in the movie he actually has this old giant tome in there.
I believe he's just telling her stories.
I thought he was flipping through it, and he's trying to tell them stories, because he's not coming up off the top of his head.
I remember her flipping through the cookbook.
Really?
But, of course, the first story, Lot 249.
Yeah, a book she gave him. She gives the book to him.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. But, Lot 249, which is basically Michael McDowell's adaptation of Arthur Conan Doyle's short story, Love number 249.
Lot number 249. Yes.
Which is basically,
what's in the box kind of thing.
What's in the box, exactly.
What's in the box?
Steve Buscemi, Julianne Moore, Robert Sedgwick, and Christian Slater, of course. And, it's a lot of jealousy, cheating in this one.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good adaptation of a very classic story. Arthur Conan Doyle is obviously known very much for giving the world Sherlock Holmes. So, it's very different compared to the other stories. Twilight Zone, Tales from the Darkside proper, a lot of them were adaptations of, current day pop stories, either in sci-fi or horror. A lot of the, Stephen King, I believe, Philip K. Dick had a lot in Outer Limits and Twilight Zone. But you got something from a what would actually be considered a literary, genius, or classic at the very least, and it's different. And it comes off very different, and it has a huge cast in it. I mean, this is very early in some of these guys' careers. I mean, Christian Slater was still kind of a teen heartthrob at the time. Steve Buscemi, this is a very early role for Steve Buscemi.
And
Julianne Moore, for fuck's sake, she's,
Steve Buscemi, he's always not in, he doesn't get the main character a lot, but, I don't remember seeing him in horror type films where he's, he's played bad guys before, but never seen him really in this type of role. And it was nice, the Mummy looked really cool.
Yeah.
He uses it to basically get his revenge, and then Christian Slater gets his revenge. But I still think overall it holds up very well today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, it was made in the 90s, so you don't expect, computer graphics, that you see today and stuff.
Yeah.
But the story was fun, and it not only does it continue with the intro, but it sets the tone as well with what you're going to see.
And honestly, I think it's probably the best story involved in this anthology, and that's saying a lot because I do like the other two stories very much, especially the last story, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I do like this. I think it's the best one, hands down. I mean, it's not just because it's based off of Arthur Conan Doyle's story, but the fact that the cast, the way it's shot and done, I think it's just really well done overall.
And without spoiling it, it does have quite a twist.
Yeah.
Which they all kind of have twists at the end, of course.
Yeah, it's Tales from the Darkside. Anyone familiar with TV shows gonna know there's just weird twists involved with that show. But the second one is, by George Romero, an adaptation of Stephen King's short story, Cat from Hell.
Now, I remember, there's an older movie called Cat's Eye? Is that kind of similar to this?
It's similar. It's a different story, if I remember right.
Okay, but this one basically is about an older man.
Stephen King doesn't like cats. He also did Pet Sematary, which had a dead cat in it. Yeah, so.
This one, I remember this one very vividly. It's an older man, William Hickey, who, as you were saying earlier, has such an iconic voice.
Yes, you were saying he was the doctor from,
Nightmare Before Christmas.
He actually appeared in an episode of Tales from the Crypt. I think it's called The Switch, where a rich millionaire, because billionaires didn't exist apparently in like 1990, but a rich millionaire switches bodies slowly with a muscle builder so he can win the affection of a young woman. Very creepy story.
I remember that one, yeah.
I believe it's in the box that I'm letting you borrow. So.
But, basically he hires a hitman to kill a cat.
Oh, and quick note, that Tales from the Crypt episode, because I really do like that actor, it was, I believe, it was the directorial debut of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, yes, that is in there then. Yeah. Yes, I was looking at that.
Yes, that was him.
But basically he hires a hitman played by David Johansen to kill this cat that lives in his house that he believes is extremely evil.
Yes.
There are 3 other occupants in the house before the cat arrived. His sister, which was Dolores Sutton, Carolyn, Alice Drummond, and the butler, which was played by Mark Margolis. And he claims that one by one the cat kept killing these people. I mean, basically, he's blaming his company is a pharmaceutical company, and it's killed lots of cats while testing this drug. So it kind of gives you the hint, is this cat really evil, or is it kind of his conscience getting the best of him?
Is it
guilty?
karma, or is it...
Which then, of course, we realize the truth in the end, which I won't spoil. But I do like, him screaming at the cat, and just... It plays up very well with his paranoia. I mean, when the hitman comes in and he's telling him about this, he's just like, okay, you're gonna pay me this much to do this? And he's like, yeah, I'm going out, and you do this and I'll be back. And it's just like, okay. And, it leaves you almost shocked at the end, I think.
There's twist after twist in this story, and I like it a lot. It's a very good Stephen King short story. It's not his best, but it's definitely entertaining, and honestly, compared to a lot of his other movies, which, unfortunately, I hate saying that, I love George Romero's stuff, but it's one of George Romero's finest directorial efforts. So there's also that going for it.
So then we move on to the basically Matthew Lawrence's third story. He's telling the witch, and this is my favorite.
Yes.
And this is the one I always mix up with Creepshow, because I always thought it was part of Creepshow.
Yeah.
Until I went out and actually bought Tales from the Darkside movie, and now I watch it every year. But The Lover's Vow, and it's written by Michael McDowell, and it's based off Japanese folklore?
Yeah, it's Japanese folklore, old yokai, Japanese ghost demons kind of thing. It's a little bit different than that, but
it's basically James Remar, which you might know as Dexter's father.
Yeah, Dexter's from Showtime's Dexter. Not Dexter's Laboratory. No, not that Dexter and his father.
I don't think anybody was thinking that, but okay.
No, he's also the father in Wilfred, the TV show Wilfred from FXX, and he played Ajax in The Warriors.
There you go.
So really, really talented guy. He's got that voice. It's kind of, like we were talking about the previous short. He's got one of those guys that has that very distinct voice, that kind of raspy voice. He could have played Batman, for fuck's sake.
Oh yeah. Or Gordon. I could see him as playing Gordon.
He has this very distinct facial features, the way his face is laid out, and but that voice, that raspy voice, is just really different. And I love this story. Like you, it's my favorite one. I don't think it's the best one in there. I think the special effects kind of make it iffy for me later on. But I think it's the best one in here, and I just love it. It feels like it could have been an episode on its own. It feels like it could have been. I wonder what they would have done if this was an episode of Tales from the Crypt instead, because it feels like it would have been right at home there, because it's really fucked up. But it's about a guy who
basically, James Remar, he witnesses a murder.
Yeah.
Which is done by a gargoyle creature, and in return for sparing his life, the gargoyle makes him vow that he can never reveal to anybody what he saw. Simple enough. You live if you don't tell anybody. Okay, who wouldn't take that deal, right?
Yeah.
And then later after that night, basically he meets this really beautiful woman played by Ray Don Chong, and they fall in love, they get married, and he's having struggles with success, trying to make it. And this, of course, this is haunting him. I imagine it would take its toll on anybody.
And he starts drawing this thing. He starts making little sculptures of it,
but of course, he can't show anybody.
Yeah.
So, of course, he's obsessed with it, and he keeps drawing it, and not being able to at least tell one person. I mean, what harm would it do, right?
Yeah, especially years after the fact.
I mean, and of course, so this vow of silence he took and promised, starts to weigh on him to the point where he can't take it. And he shows his wife a picture.
And then it just gets fucked up. I don't want to go any further than that, just because you have to watch this, because it's just the most fucked up ending I've seen in any kind of movie. And I've seen Old Boy, and that was screwed up to begin with. This is worse. This is just screwed.
I don't know if it's worse than that, but I will say this is, as I said, this is my favorite. It's the one that stuck with me the most as a kid.
Yeah.
Because when it all happens, what happens, it was scarring almost.
Yes, it's a horrifying thing.
I couldn't even imagine.
Honestly, and it's weird too, because like we were saying, the previous story is by Stephen King, and this feels very Stephen King-ish in terms of the story. I'm surprised Stephen King didn't write this originally. I'm surprised it's not one of his short stories. It seems like it would have been right up his alley, because you get this tormented guy who's not too good, he's not too bad, he's just a guy struggling, and horrible shit happens to him.
But you could totally put yourself in the guy's shoes. 100%.
Oh, definitely. Think about it. If you were told that your life would be spared if you never told this one thing to anyone, as outlandish as it was.
Done. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
You spare them out, done. Okay.
Yeah, you have to take the deal. Why not? Why, it's that or die. You take the deal. But how can you live with keeping that one secret? You have to tell someone, especially if it's so outrageous of what you saw. It's not just like it wasn't like a guy got gunned down. It was this awful, horrible, twisted thing that exists. And you're the only one in the world that knows about it?
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to put on someone.
Yeah?
Obviously.
Yes, very much.
But then, of course, we come back to Timmy and in the witch's kitchen. And, of course, she even remarks that he saved the best story for last.
Yeah.
And before she tries to cook him, he basically escapes, gets out. I'm not exactly 100%.
Yeah, he manages. I think she opens the door, tries to get him, and he manages to.
Very hot. Marbles. I remember he throws his marbles on the floor.
I lost my marbles.
Very Hansel and Gretel-ish, of course.
Yeah.
But it's a nice roundabout, and of course, he does break the fourth wall at the very end too. But it leaves you. It's one of those movies that it is technically a horror film with comedy. It may not scare you, but it's right up the alley of Halloween and horror. And
it's definitely gonna make you. There's gonna be a couple cringe moments. It's gonna make you feel like, man, this is awful. And not in a leprechaun.
And all three stories play on different emotions, different type of scaring elements.
Different type of horror. Each one is completely different. Even the book endings with Matthew Lawrence, it's a different type of horror.
It definitely is a movie that should be watched, at least once every couple years.
Oh, definitely. And you share it with your friends. You can watch it with your kids. It's not a horror film that can't be watched with children.
Maybe not the Lover's Vow version.
Oh, that'll screw them up a bit, but I mean, come on. Everyone likes a good monster. It didn't
keep me awake at night, but it definitely stuck with me throughout the years.
Yeah, and that's a good sign of a good horror film right there. A good horror story is that it sticks with you. Like any good story. But for horror to really stick around as opposed to just boo, pop-up scare, that's a good sign right there.
Before we wrap this up completely, isn't there rumors of maybe CW trying to relaunch
this?
Yeah,
so for discussion, for the last few years, there's been discussion that Tales from the Darkside, the TV series, was going to be revived. I guess the rumor is now it's going to be out on CW. I'm a bit leery about that because it doesn't seem like CW is kind of catering to that kind of audience. But it's Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, is actually working with a bunch of other individuals to revive the series, and I'm looking forward to that idea.
I do remember talking to people at a con from Fear.net, which is kind of like a Netflix streaming service. Mm-hmm. They said they were trying to get Tales from the Crypt maybe revived. So maybe if Tales from the Darkside, can't get CW, Fear.net might be something to shop around and check.
Definitely an interesting thing to
I'd love to see them both come back. And hell, I'd love to see Monsters come back too.
Twilight Zone's already being discussed about being brought back, and that's been discussed the last few years, and there's been a lot of progress on that.
Only if Norm Macdonald does Rod Sterling. And that's that.
That's the end of that one. But one last bit of trivia. We're going to be discussing this on another day. The other anthology collection, Creepshow 1 and 2. We will not be discussing 3 because there's no reason for us to discuss that at all. Because it was done without collaboration between George Romero or Stephen King. So none of the original individuals were involved. It was just Creepshow 3 by name only. And as far as, Tom Savini, special effects guru, Tom Savini, he's saying that this movie, Tales from the Darkside, should be considered the official third film in the Creepshow trilogy.
Well, actually, the story, Cat from Hell, was supposed to be in Creepshow 2, but it was scrapped for budget reasons.
Yeah, so for those who love Creepshow, love those kinds of movies, watch 1, 2, and then watch this, and you'll see that this fits very well with the Creepshow. The only difference is it doesn't have the creep in it.
Exactly.
It's the only thing it's missing. Instead of the creep, you get Matthew Lawrence and a witch.
He's kind of a creep.
He's a bit of a creep, yeah. I saw Boy Meets Squirrel.
Yes.
But with that, we're going to leave you for tonight. This has been Steve Arviso.
Charles Musick.
For 2 Guys, 1 Movie, and we'll see you on the dark side.